Mr. Scott Capps from North Carolina DOT.
All set up. The Renee called me and said, "Hey, I want you to do a presentation at the thing." I said, "Look, ain't everybody tired of hearing about North Carolina Chip Seals program? I mean, I'm kind of tired of talking about it." But anyway, so we were going to do this presentation in the fall, but we had Hurricane Matthew, and so we've started out on this. And I reckon what makes it so endearing to us is that we did have a robust in-house program. Felt like we were really good with what we did. A lot of the research we had done in-house to promote our own system. We had brought everybody together across the state several times a year to share best practices. We had our own QA/QC over the program, and so to lose that was very detrimental to what we thought. But anyway, so this presentation is really going about how we transition from an in-house program to contracting and the legislative mandates that kind of led to that. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is our outsourcing report to the JLTOC, which is the Joint Legislative Transportation Oversight Committee. So it includes summary of legislative mandate, department activities and outsourcing, and legislative data requirements. All right, so this is a lot of words on the page. But bottom line, in 2014, the General Assembly said that you will start outsourcing pavement preservation treatments. That if you want this money, you're going to give it to the contractors. And so I talked a little bit yesterday about how we kind of lost our program because of bridge and stuff, but to get it back, and there was a lot of, let's just say, dislike for chip seals in the legislative body. Some understood that with the 80,000 mile system, you got to have that in your toolbox, and some didn't care. But anyway, so the legislation dictated the outsourcing guidelines of 20%, 30%, 55, 80. You can see that by 17, 18, or this coming up year, we're supposed to be 80% outsourced. We're really close to that already. We've exceeded these outsourcing targets every year. Also, during the 2015 legislative session, they did give us an extra $35 million. We're getting $65 million to get $35, but unfortunately put like goal requirements on that to meet lane miles. And so a lot of the divisions had contracts and plans in place, but the price of the unit cost to meet that was not going to be get them to meet their goal. So they had to come back and take some contracts down, and then went out there and we fog sealed. We painted roads black. I mean, we fog sealed roads that probably didn't need fog sealing, but we met our mileage goal because that was the target. Spend the money, meet this goal. Since then, I've been able to convince our leadership that if we have to do a highway and maintenance improvement plan every year that shows exactly what treatments we're going to do on what roads, and then if we don't do that, we've got to explain why. And so I've been able to convince the leadership to just say that is our goal. Whatever that maintenance improvement plan says is your goal. Don't make up some bullcrap unit cost number and try to hit, a goal of miles, because you're going to have the problem of you're out there doing the wrong treatment on the wrong road just to meet a goal. So we did spend that $100 million, and then in 16 and 17 we had $85 million. Oh, the other thing was, like our legislature dictated pavement preservation treatments. And so I don't know if anybody else's legislature did, but so North Carolina was different than anybody else in the world. We as or agencies and industries know what pavement preservation treatments are, and crack sealing wasn't even on the list. So we didn't even have crack sealing as a pavement preservation treatment. We did have FDR, and then I did see somebody yesterday talk about they included FDR as a preservation treatment. So. But I thought that was unique that they're defining pavement preservation for us, a legislative body. We were able to get crack sealing added back in the next year in the legislation that they did it. So our department activities, we developed contract development and specification industry outreach, education and training, contract inspection, and legislative data requirements. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our state force transition. Contract development and specification. DOT collaborated with CAPA and NCAA. Now, NCAA is the North Carolina Aggregate Association, not the governing body of college sports that did not come to North Carolina anymore because of bathrooms. But anyway, that's beside the point. And CAPA is the Carolina Asphalt, is that right, Shane? Carolina Asphalt Pavement Association. All right, so Asphalt Pavement Association. But anyway, we work with them to collaborate on developing the specifications for chip seals. So new chip seal specifications were released in January 15 and were revised based on industry inspection in January of 16. And so last year we had 76 contracts, including preservation work, that were advertised and awarded. The thing that kind of made us most ill was we had to take our people. The legislation specifically said DOT will train and grow the industry. You know, so, and some of the industry didn't really want to grow in that area. But when you had that money sitting out there, that $65 to $100 million annually, they did want a cut of that dollar. So there were contractors that somewhat were interested. But so we did the outreach, and we did try to grow the industry. We had paper preservation topic at the annual CAPA NCDOT Summit. We did 12 regional asphalt summits. We had the National Center come in and do their chip seal training course for contractors and our staff. And then we did our own chip seal training. We got with a contractor who was former NCDOT and really big in the program. He developed a training program and went around and trained in regional areas across the state. Our staff and the contractor staff. And we also developed a website to make the training materials available, and that website is listed there. I'm not going to. Then we worked on contract inspection. And now it was interesting to hear some of the state reports yesterday. We have the same trouble. When we switched from in-house or the maintenance side of the house to the construction side of the house and used regular construction inspectors or CEI inspectors to go out there and inspect all this different types of pavement, they don't know what they're looking at. And so all they're looking at is the specification says this, they're shutting the contractor down because he's gone 0.10 over on their rate, and anybody that's done a chip seal knows it is an art and a science. You can put that, you can put your specifications out there, but we put a range. And actually, when we changed our specification and went with a target, but it's a target plus or minus, so it's still a range, either way you want to look at it. But if you don't have somebody that's knowledgeable of the product and the process, it's hard to get an inspector out there. So I heard a lot of states in their state report talk about that, and we're struggling with that. So we're still going to do some training, and it's more so going to be internal. It's going to be for our inspectors, either DOT inspectors or the CEI inspectors we get. And I know, like on the first slurry seal contract I did, we went out there and we inspected the emulsion, and then we did an inspection on the sand or aggregate, and then we're out there on the road, and the construction inspector's looking at me, and he goes, "Well, what am I supposed to do now?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, I ain't taking up tickets, and I ain't doing, nuclear test on that." I said, "No, we don't have any of that." And he goes, "Well, what am I looking for?" I said, "Well, when this stuff comes out, make sure this stuff comes out brown and eventually turns black." And so that's, that was the inspection process we had. And so, there's a lot of training that can be out there on that. Eventually, I hope this brown stuff turns black. And then the other thing we're doing is looking at considering to develop the certification programs. And our only drawback to that, we're still going to have the training. We're still looking at the certification. We think we need that. It's just if that's something CAP is against, then we're probably not going to have certification. We're just going to have training. If they're for it, we'll probably have certifications. Just to be totally honest about how it goes. Either way, we're going to have training whether you're certified or not. I hope that the training comes about. The moving ahead, the legislature wanted to know where every penny was being spent. So they said, we're going to give you this money, and we want to know where every dollar goes and how much that dollar costs, and we want to know every dollar by month, by treatment, and by down to the gnat tiny. So this is just an example of the dollars we spent each month last year on the preservation treatments with the, each month, I'll get to the preservation treatment, but with hitting 6,600 lane miles. And then we also had to show the amount performed by contract. So right at 48 million was of the 71. So we were meeting our outsourcing requirements. So that's why I got on Tracy's group, because we already got all this. It's going to be easy for me to say, here's exactly how much we spent, where we spent it, and exactly how much it cost to us. The other thing that the legislature did was create a business unit cost report. And I will say this, every state agency that deals with maintenance, you know that capturing unit cost for your work accomplished is a difficult task. And I will admit that rightly so, the legislature got mad about the answer of, well, that's just bad data. That number really ain't right, that's just bad data. So they were like, well, damn it, you better give me some good data. Bring me some good data. And so to hold us accountable, they created this business unit cost report where we got to track our stuff and the contractor's cost and do a comparison. And so for the chip seals, we're still doing some in-house. So we had to show the lane miles treated, the average cost, and then the average cost performed by DOT and the average cost performed by contract. And then if you are 10% outside of the statewide average, you got some explaining to do. Now, I will say this, the explaining is not that difficult. So most people that were over 10% were very, very high on the contract, and most people that were under did state force work. So they just said, we did more state force, so we were under 10%, and we did more contract, and the contract costs were higher, so we were over 10%. And that worked, that seemed to work. That was a good explanation. The one thing it didn't show was, and we've tried to implement some regional activities. If you've been in North Carolina, we got the mountains, the Piedmont, and the coast. So there's 14 counties in northeast North Carolina, Division 1, and not one quarry. So everything has to be trucked in or railed in to that. There's no quarries there. So naturally the costs are going to be higher. Anybody that's driven in the mountains, 30 miles anywhere else in the world is different than 30 miles in the mountains. It just takes you forever more to get there. So we tried to regionalize some of our unit costs, but overall, we're looking at unit costs in that 10% average. So you can see the activities that we did, with 65% of them being chip seals, did get crack seal added back into it, and so we did a little bit of these seals, but primarily our bread and butter was the chip seal. So our next steps, 5 divisions used state forces during 2016 pavement season, and 3 divisions of 14. I'll already say out of 14. 3 divisions are still using state forces in this pavement season, and then 11 are fully contracting out chip seals. So where we had a crew or 2 crews in every division, we're down to just 3 in the state. So our next steps are continue to use experienced staff in developing and inspecting projects. I've pulled back one of our CI guys. We're going to bring him in to go around and just be that man, that person that helps out on these contractors, helps these inspectors, helps figure out how to, So he was a bituminous supervisor for 20 years, and And so I'm just bringing him back in. He retired and went with a contractor, but we're going to get a contract with them to bring him back in and just ride around the state and fix the problems, or try to help fix the problems. We're going to continue to do our training and try to do our internal and CI. Internal, you can almost get it, but when you got all these projects and you got CI inspectors coming in and out, it's not necessarily that the inspector you train is going to get that project, So we're trying to work with our construction side of the house to make sure we do that. And then also, legislatively mandated, we will continue to monitor our costs and report as required to NCGA and Tracy's group here. We do have the manuals and stuff online. It was in this presentation. It is actually a very good manual, very good training manual developed by one of our former supervisors. But the biggest thing I reckon was the butt hurt over that we used to do this ourselves, and it just got taken away from us. And so we've had to take 3 years to get over that. And I finally told Emily, there's more to pavement preservation than in-house chip seal program. That all these other states probably have a chip seal program. It might have been not as robust as North Carolina's, but there's more to pavement preservation than just that. So let's get back into the game. So this is the first meeting I've been to in years. We're trying to get back into the game on pavement preservation. We do a lot of other activities, we're going to try to do some other activities other than just chip seal, and then see where we go from there. So any questions?
In your opinion, and I know you're not afraid to give it, what do you think was the intent of that mandate? Was it for fleet reduction? Because you're not doing any less chip seal, and you said a lot of legislators didn't like chip seals, but you're not doing any less chip seals, you're just contracting it out. You're just shifting from in-house to outsource. Is it for fleet reduction reasons, or what was the main driving force of that?
The main driving force
Besides them
was
just being crazy.
No, like I said, some of these things. I think the main driving force was that to draw down the department, not fleet reduction, just draw down the department as a whole. Because I can go on a whole nother presentation on the hundreds and hundreds of people we've lost in the last 3 years drawing down the department. So I think the goal was to draw down the department. That private sector is better, more efficient than DOT or government stuff. We can prove that they're not in certain situations, and but nobody wants to hear that part of it. But anyway, so I think the goal was to draw down the department to actually get rid of chip seals. But then we said we've got to have this, and so they came back and said, well, if you've got to have it, then you will outsource it. And so that was the intent, is to smaller government agency. It was felt that DOT was too big. And this is something that can be contracted out. There's no doubt about that. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Once again, we will hope to have representatives back here at this meeting in years to come. We're going to try to get back into the game because it is more to pavement preservation than just the in-house chip seal program. So, and thank you, Ernest. This was a great conference. I'll say it up here. Great job. I've enjoyed the interaction and the presentation. So thank you all very much.